God's grace to you and his peace from God our Father, from our Lord, our Savior Jesus. My dear brothers and sisters, how does a pastor say goodbye after 18 years? Check off the list of self-accomplishments. I did this and this and this and this. Just to run back through nostalgia for nostalgia's sake. Remember when we did this? Remember when? A list of orders from the future. Well, if you want things to go as well as they went when I was here, here's what you need to keep doing. No. As a pastor says goodbye, we strive to do the very same thing that I did the very first time that I stepped into this pulpit. To share with you the love, the grace, the forgiveness, the power of our good and gracious God. So let's set the stage with a reminder of what brought us together here in the first place. Why did Faith Congregation, why does it exist and why did it call a pastor those 18 years ago? To do that, I actually want to start with something, I guess, maybe that at first glance seems a little strange. It's one of the reasons I wanted my last service here to be a communion service. One of the things that you get to see as a pastor all of the years that you do this, when people come up for communion, is their hands. As they put out the hand, and you put that wafer on the hand. And that has always struck me. Because as you look at all of those different hands, you see the cracked, sometimes grease-caked or mud-caked hands of a farmer or a mechanic. You see the beautifully manicured hands of the thoracic surgeon. You see the strong hands of the athlete. You see maybe the gnarled, trembling hands of that person here now in this world, 80, 90, even, yes, 100 years. Those youthful hands may be shaking a little bit of the confirmand receiving Lord's Supper for the very first time. Hands from men, hands from women. Hands of different skin colors. And it just has always struck me. There is pretty much nothing else that would bring that group of people together at a given place in time, week after week for an hour. What is it that brings them together? And the answer is Jesus and what he has done for them. The thing that brings us together each and every week is our mission. Our mission to share Jesus with each other, our mission to make Jesus known to those who don't yet know him, our mission to look at those beautiful gifts. Forgiveness for people that don't deserve it. Rescue from hell for those who don't deserve it. And absolute confidence that we're going to see each other again when we die, after we die. Place in heaven, won for us by Jesus. I said it at the beginning of the service. I reference it again. Faith's mission statement that we exist as a congregation to gather the lost and to strengthen believers. And so it is today that I urge you, stay true to that mission. How does a congregation stay true to that mission, which was here long before I got here, and which remains long after I'm gone? Jesus gives us an absolutely beautiful answer to that question in the words of Matthew 7, the words before us this morning. Therefore, everyone who hears these words of mine and puts them into practice is like a wise man who built his house on the rock. The rain came down. The streams rose. The winds blew and beat against that house. Yet it did not fall because it had its foundations on the rock. But everyone who hears these words of mine and does not put them into practice is like a foolish man who built his house on the sand. The rain came down, the streams rose, the winds blew and beat against that house, and it fell with a great crash. When Jesus had finished saying these things, the crowds were amazed at his teaching. Jesus' words. If there is one phrase that I hope you remember from today, that phrase is this: keep building on the rock. We don't have to guess what that picture means. Jesus spells it out for us word for word. What does it mean to build on the rock? What's the rock? Listens to my words and puts them into practice. Listens to my words and puts them into practice. And so today I urge you, keep building on the rock. Listen to Jesus' words and put them into practice. Keep building on the rock, thankful for those who built before us. Hard to compress that into 2 paragraphs of a sermon. Why? Because those who built before us, well, that list goes all the way back to Adam and Eve. All of the people in the Bible, all of the people in the history of the church who went on before us. So today I'm going to limit myself to those who built before us here at Faith Congregation. A little more than 18 years ago, when I received the call here to faith, one of the first phone calls that I got, besides the elected leaders of the congregation and the pastors, was from a man with a deep bass voice. And he didn't say a whole lot. In fact, at first, I don't think I even understood what he said when he introduced himself, but he went on to say, faith is a very special place. The people here will love and embrace you. We want you to come here to share the words of Jesus with us. And that was pretty much it. For those of you who knew him, it probably would not surprise you when I share that that man was Harold Hilmer. And that's before I knew his whole story. The congregational chairman here at Faith during a 2-year vacancy, and that was long before Faith had 3 pastors. It just had 1. And so when that pastor was gone, well, and finances, I know we've gone through our shares of ups and downs in 18 years, but they were truly, truly challenging at that time, where a congregation wondered, will we hang on? What brought them through that? Listen to my words. Put them into practice. And did God bring them through? He did. One of the ways he blessed them was with a man whose face, and you'll probably recognize. In fact, you're going to see it in a few minutes. Brand new seminary graduate, green as could be, to come and serve this congregation, a man by the name of Mark Schrader, now the president of our church body. And those were precipitous times too. A lot to navigate through. Plenty of challenges. What brought them through? Listen to the words of Jesus and put them into practice. And God blessed. God blessed richly. To the extent that now they were having to think of, well, God is allowing us to grow. Where do we go? Now I remember sitting in the driveway on the little porch driveway swing of Norm Immel. Lived across from us when we lived at the parsonage for 12 years. And pretty often when the weather was good and he was out there, he'd go and sit and he would chat. I remember him reminiscing about the whole story of buying the cornfields on which now this school and church stand. And that decision was not without controversy. How did the congregation navigate all of that? How did they get to the point of building that school on this property? Listening to the words of Jesus and putting them into practice. And did God bless? Absolutely. Probably beyond the congregation's dreams. But along with those blessings, a whole other set of challenges. will we move our church? A building that so many of us built with our own hands? Really, I mean it when I say that. Where we were married? Where our children were baptized? A decision that certainly could threaten to split a church right in two. There's no wrong decision, by the way, but a decision had to be made. And they made it. What keeps a congregation unified at a time like that just tugs at your emotional heartstrings? Same thing. Listen to Jesus' words and put them into practice. And it just so happens at that time, God had blessed Faith Congregation with another pastor. Pastor by the name of Jim Schumann, whose reputation everywhere that I have gone, from when I talked to people at Faith Congregation who were here when he was here, and from my own experience because he was a fellow pastor down in the South Atlantic District when I served in Florida, is this: Jim Schumann is a guy who will always bring us back to the Bible. Listen to Jesus' words and put them into practice. I could go on for probably hours. Why? Because you think of the principals here during that time, all of the teachers and called workers here during that time, and that's just a minority. It's the people, right? All of those people who used their time and talent and abilities and skills to do things so that could listen to the words of Jesus and put them into practice. And whether they were at the forefront of leadership or whether they were doing the things behind the scenes, putting up drywall, painting, groundskeeping, being a shoulder to cry on when people were struggling. God blessed. God blessed so richly and so. Keep building on the rock. Follow their example. Follow their example. Listening to the words of Jesus and putting them into practice. 18 years ago, my family and I were privileged to become part of this family. In the summer of 2008, we started packing up our belongings, and a guy named Dave Monroe, incoming congregational chairman, just also happened to own a Mayflower Moving Company franchise. Drove up with his Mayflower truck, and we packed all of our belongings, and Cindy and I and a 4-year-old Lucas and a 2-year-old Jenna arrived in Fond du Lac, Wisconsin, and right from the get-go we were welcomed with open arms. A crew of people ready at the parsonage to move us in, and I will name a few names when I do that. Please remember, I'm forgetting all kinds of other names, and you're just as important and loved and valued. But I remember Scott Wolf carting our upright chest freezer down the stairs in the parsonage, and I am glad that he did not trip. I've needed him along the way. I remember Jim Conan screwing together our coffee table furniture, Gloria Meyer and so many others organizing food to be brought over, and that was just the beginning of 18 years in which you welcomed us, you cared for us, you were there with us during the celebrating times, but you were also there for us during the difficult times. They're doing what? Listening to the words of Jesus and putting them into practice. Now, I want to go back to 2008 for a few minutes. Isn't it interesting a little bit how memories fade? You remember what was going on in 2008? Mercury Marine was hanging on by a thread. Would they close up shop and move to Oklahoma? Or stay here? I remember, and Pastor Hauglasieri can vouch for this, at our weekly staff meetings, there was a list every week of our members who had been laid off or let go. How'd we make it through the Great Recession? listen to the words of Jesus and put them into practice. And in that particular scenario, it was where we could, helping with finances, being those people to lean on, but more than anything else, those words of Jesus which remind. Those things that seem so important, like without them our life is done, our jobs, that security, where will I live? Those are all just temporary things. Those are all just temporary things. The forgiveness we have through Jesus and a confidence in heaven that He gives us, those things don't change. And yes, that brings you through those difficult times, even more than the financial assistance and any of those things. You listen to the words of God. You put them into practice. I think of all the boards and committees and council and elders and so forth that I was privileged to serve on, and the people that I worked with in doing this, building on the rock. I'll just use one example, not because it's any better than the others, but I got to come up with at least one example. I think of the times that I spent with the various long-range planning committees at Faith along the way. Two in particular where we came up with the 6-year strategic plans, and I look at those. I did the other day, and wow, God allowed us to accomplish so many of the goals that were on that list, like increasing the number of Bible studies that we have, ultimately starting up a preschool, things of that nature. I remember when some of those goals were attempted and achieved, even I, in a lot of my heart, was kind of skeptical. Will we ever pull this off? Adding a wing onto the school and bringing in a second kindergarten teacher for a class to split all at the time where we had about $200,000 in accumulated operating debt. How's that going to work? What brought us through? Pastor Wigan's amazing planning and leadership? No. You listen to the words of God. You put them into practice. And God's people responded. Continued to bless us. Remember 2019 and 2020? I don't want to. COVID. Remember the blue tape? Every other pew. The Easter Sunday, we couldn't come to God's house to worship. All of the volatility and the different ideas and opinions of what we should do, what we shouldn't do, all of those other things. That taxed and challenged the congregation too. Absolutely it did. What brings us through? Listen to the words of Jesus, and you put them into practice. So blessed with so many team members. I think of the associates along the way. Pastor Haugley, Pastor Gertner, Pastor Pufall, Pastor Parsons. I think I would have to include Pastor Whitty, retired pastor when I first got here. The principals, Mr. Wolt, Mr. Zunker for that year, Mr. Herkstroder, and now Mr. Rank. I think of all of those faculty members, and no, I'm sorry, I'm not going to name you all because I know I would forget one. I couldn't even get all the council members the other week. But again, that's just the called workers. So many, many more, namely all of you, partners in listening to the words of Jesus and putting them into practice, and how God has blessed. And so, again, I urge you, keep building on the rock. Thankful for these 18 years of partnership, doing it together. And so now this chapter comes to a close. We part, not permanently, but our earthly relationship changes. It comes with some sadness, but it comes with blessings too. And how do we know? Because God is still with us. The mission is still the same. The rock of this congregation builds on is not Pastor Mike Wigand. Never has been. The rock that this congregation builds on are the words of Jesus and putting them into practice. And as we do, we have God's promise. I will be with you. I will bless you. That doesn't mean it always goes swimmingly. It hasn't, right? But God will be with us. God will continue to bless the work that you do together. So I ask you, first of all, please continue to pray for me and for my family. And a new ministry, serving the students at Winnebago Lutheran Academy. Technically, I still work for you guys. Pray for them. They're at a vulnerable stage of life. And there are just so many ways in which Satan is trying to grab the things that are most valuable and most important to them and take them away. And then continue this work, absolutely confident that God will continue to bless. Pray that God will bring that next shepherd who will be blessed to have that partnership with you and continuing to build on the rock. Cherish the workers that you have, as they were such a blessing to me. They continue to be such a blessing to you. And cherish each other. People beside you this morning, in front of you and behind you, and all of the different ways in which you, I, yes, flawed people, are there for each other. Is Faith Congregation a perfect place? No, we need to remember that. Why are we here after all? This is a hospital for sick sinners who need Jesus' grace. But we have it. And we're blessed to know the cure. And as many hours as God continues to give us, as many days as He keeps us here, those are days in which we can keep building on the rock, being there to strengthen each other, to encourage each other, being there to seek out those who don't yet have the gifts that we have. Share the cure. My dear family, after 18 years of working together, I leave you simply with these words. Keep building on the rock. Amen.